Say here to the governor, you wrote the governor. This isn't some DoorDash delivery guy. You wrote the governor of your state 3 years ago. How, if somebody is in our country illegally and commits a crime, are you going to put them in jail if you believe this about immigration?
Senator, I can assure you, were I so fortunate to be confirmed, I would treat crimes seriously.
That's not what this letter says, Professor, and it was 3 years ago. Wasn't when you were in law school, and you didn't turn it over to us. We had to find it on our own.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Capitol Insights. Today we're diving into some intense courtroom drama involving Senator John Kennedy and Judicial nominee Professor Sarah French Russell. This is about a letter calling for the release of prisoners during the COVID-19 pandemic, and trust me, it's full of tense moments and tough questions. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button on Capitol Insights and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our future deep dives. All right, let's jump right into it. First up, we've got Senator Kennedy questioning Professor Sarah Russell about this controversial letter. Kennedy directly asks if Russell remembers signing a letter to Governor Lamont of Connecticut that advocated for releasing prisoners due to COVID-19. And guess what? Russell struggles to recall the details. Imagine being put on the spot like that.
Why didn't you turn this over to us when you were asked to submit documents?
So, Senator, I made every effort to search for everything that I had ever signed. That's not a letter I remember, but I will certainly take a look at that. And
we found it just with a search on the internet.
So I apologize, Senator. I apologize.
In your letter to the governor, here's what you say. As they stand, prisons and jails are detrimental to public health and human rights and disproportionately harm marginalized communities, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other communities of color, immigrants, people with mental illness, people with disabilities, people in the LGBTQ plus community, people who use drugs, people engaged in sex work and street economies, and people experiencing houselessness and poverty. So if you believe that about our prisons, how are you going to ever sentence somebody to prison?
So, Senator, I will need to take a look at that letter, and I apologize that that's not something I found to hand to this committee.
You're not denying you said that.
I do need to see the letter to see the context, because again, it's not something I remember adding my name to. Yeah. I can assure you, right. Senator.
And then you go on to say, talking once again about our jails, the global COVID-19 pandemic is throwing into sharp relief the untenable state of our penal system and the need for sustained action to shrink its scale, shrink its size, and shrink its scope. You sound here like the district attorney in San Francisco. If you believe that, how are you going to ever sentence anybody to jail, Professor?
I can assure you, Senator, that I understand the role of the judge, and that I can assure you prison time is an appropriate sentence in many cases.
That's not what you say here to the governor. You wrote the governor. This isn't some DoorDash delivery guy. You wrote the governor of your state 3 years ago.
So again, Senator,
in law school.
So again, Senator, I would need to look at the letter. It sounds like it was written at the height of the pandemic, where governors were looking for.
You also wrote the governor, you said people over the age of 55 are at the greatest risk for COVID-19, but also pose the least public safety risk to our communities. People in this age group can and should be released immediately to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. You think the governor just, if you're over the age of 55, he should let everybody go?
No, Senator, that's not a position.
That's what you said.
Okay.
Here it is, big as Dallas.
Again, Senator, I will look at that letter. I can assure you that.
Find it on Google, Professor. You also say Governor Lamont should issue an executive order to direct the state's attorney offices and law enforcement entities, including the town and city police departments, and any federal law enforcement entity operating within the state to immediately cease adding to the incarcerated prison population given the high risk of infection posed by the population increase. You asked the governors to tell every law enforcement official in the state to stop arresting people and putting them in jail, didn't you?
So again, Senator, I have to look at that letter. I do think there were modifications that the governors were making around the country to respond to the pandemic.
You also had an opinion in your letter about, can I have another 30 seconds, Mr.? You had an opinion in your letter about immigration. You said immigration detention poses the same health risk to jails and prisons, and Connecticut law enforcement must stop feeding people into the unsafe and inhumane immigration detention system. Then you say Governor Lamont should release all individuals currently in state custody who are awaiting transfer to ICE custody, and the governor should declare a moratorium on all such future transfers. How, if somebody is in our country illegally and commits a crime, are you going to put them in jail if you believe this about immigration?
Senator, I can assure you, were I so fortunate to be confirmed, I would treat crimes seriously.
That's not what this letter says, Professor, and it was 3 years ago. It wasn't when you were in law school, and you didn't turn it over to us. We had to find it on our own.
So, that was an intense back and forth, right? Senator Kennedy really pushed Russell to explain her past views on releasing prisoners and immigration detention. And Russell's lack of recall didn't exactly help his case. It's fascinating to see how moments like these play out when someone's judicial career is on the line. What do you guys think? Was Russell being honest, or do you think she was just trying to avoid giving direct answers? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on Capitol Insights and ring the notification bell for more deep dives into news and politics. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.